The morning sun cast long shadows across the manicured gardens of Buckingham Palace as preparations began for what would become one of the most talked-about royal events of the year. Inside the palace walls, staff members moved with practiced precision, ensuring every detail was perfect for the upcoming ceremony honoring local community leaders. Among the distinguished guests expected that day was Carole Middleton, mother of the Princess of Wales, whose presence always drew particular attention from both the media and palace staff. Captain James Morrison had served as a royal guard for nearly 15 years, his record spotless and his knowledge of protocol encyclopedic. Standing at attention in the grand hallway, his red uniform immaculate and his bearing proud, he represented the very best of the Queen's Guard. Morrison had protected members of the royal family through countless public appearances, state visits, and private functions. His colleagues respected him, his superiors trusted him, and he had never once wavered in his duty or made an error in protocol. The distinction between members of the royal family and their extended connections was something every guard learned during their initial training. The hierarchy was clear and unwavering. Working royals took precedence over all others, with specific protocols governing how each should be greeted, addressed, and treated during official functions. Queen Camilla, as the wife of King Charles III, held a position of particular importance in this carefully structured world, deserving of the highest forms of respect and recognition. As the morning progressed, palace staff briefed the guards on the day's schedule and the expected arrival times of various dignitaries. The ceremony would bring together members of the royal family, government officials, and prominent citizens who had made significant contributions to their communities. Security protocols were reviewed, routes were confirmed, and every guard was reminded of their specific duties and positions throughout the event. Carole Middleton's invitation to the ceremony reflected her unique position within the extended royal circle. As the mother of Catherine, the Princess of Wales, she had become a familiar figure at significant royal events, though she remained technically outside the formal royal hierarchy. Her presence at such functions was always carefully managed, with clear guidelines about her role and the appropriate level of protocol to be observed in her interactions with official palace staff. The relationship between the Middleton family and the royal household had evolved significantly since Catherine's marriage to Prince William. What began as the integration of a middle-class family into the most aristocratic circles in Britain had developed into a complex web of relationships that sometimes challenged traditional protocol. Carole Middleton, in particular, had navigated this world with grace and intelligence, earning respect from many within the palace while always maintaining appropriate boundaries. Captain Morrison reviewed his post assignments one final time, noting that he would be stationed near the main entrance where arriving guests would be received. His role was to maintain security while also serving as part of the ceremonial welcome that characterized such events. The balance between vigilance and pageantry was something he had mastered over his years of service, understanding instinctively when to blend into the background and when his presence needed to be more prominent. The palace buzzed with activity as florists arranged elaborate displays, caterers prepared refreshments, and protocol officers made final adjustments to the seating arrangements and order of proceedings. Every element had been planned weeks in advance, with backup plans for various contingencies and detailed instructions for all staff members involved in the event's execution. Among the arriving guests, Carole Middleton's car approached the palace gates shortly before the scheduled ceremony time. She had attended enough royal functions to understand the importance of punctuality and appropriate behavior, always conscious that her actions reflected not only on herself but potentially on her daughter and son-in-law. Her approach to royal events was characterized by dignity and restraint, participating fully while never overstepping the boundaries of her unofficial status. The morning air was crisp as various dignitaries began arriving at the palace, each greeted according to their status and role in the day's proceedings. Security personnel maintained their vigilant watch, while ceremonial guards provided the visual splendor that characterized royal events. The coordination required to manage such occasions successfully was immense, involving dozens of staff members working in perfect synchronization. He had developed an instinct over the years for identifying potential security concerns while maintaining the welcoming atmosphere appropriate for such ceremonial occasions. His experience had taught him to remain alert without appearing tense, professional without seeming cold or unwelcoming to legitimate guests. The protocol training that every guard received was comprehensive and detailed, covering not just security procedures but also the complex etiquette governing interactions with members of the royal family and their guests. Understanding who merited which level of formal recognition was crucial to maintaining the dignity and tradition that defined royal ceremonies. These protocols had been developed over centuries and were considered fundamental to the proper functioning of the monarchy. As Carole Middleton's vehicle approached the main entrance, Captain Morrison prepared to fulfill his ceremonial role in greeting the arriving guests. The routine was familiar to him, having performed similar duties hundreds of times throughout his career. He understood exactly what was expected of him and had never had reason to doubt his ability to execute his responsibilities perfectly. The importance of maintaining proper protocol extended beyond mere ceremony, into the realm of constitutional significance. The way members of the royal family and their associates were treated by palace staff reflected the broader principles underlying the British monarchical system. Every bow, every greeting, every gesture of respect carried meaning that extended far beyond the immediate moment. Queen Camilla's arrival had been scheduled for slightly later in the proceedings, allowing her to make an appropriately grand entrance befitting her status as a senior member of the royal family. Her presence at such events was always carefully orchestrated to emphasize her position within the royal hierarchy and her role in supporting the king's official duties. The protocol surrounding her appearances had been refined over the years, since her marriage to then Prince Charles. The relationship dynamics within the extended royal family had become increasingly complex as the institution adapted to modern circumstances while maintaining traditional structures. The integration of new family members, whether through marriage or other connections, required careful navigation of established protocols while allowing for natural human relationships to develop and flourish. Captain Morrison had observed these evolving dynamics throughout his years of service, watching as the royal family adapted to changing times while preserving essential traditions. His role as a guard provided him with a unique perspective on the private moments and interactions that occurred away from public scrutiny, giving him insights into the genuine personalities behind the public facades. The training and preparation that went into royal events was exhaustive, with every possible scenario considered and appropriate responses planned. Staff members underwent regular refresher courses on protocol, security procedures, and emergency responses. The goal was always to ensure that events proceeded smoothly and that all participants, from the most senior royals to the newest palace employees, understood their roles and responsibilities. As the ceremony time approached, the atmosphere within the palace grew more focused and intense. Final preparations were completed, positions were confirmed, and everyone involved in the event's execution took their places. The machinery of royal protocol was about to spring into action, with each person playing their part in what was expected to be another flawless demonstration of British pageantry and tradition. The significance of proper protocol extended beyond the immediate event to the broader perception of the monarchy and its place in British society. Every public appearance, every ceremonial function, every interaction between royals and their staff contributed to the overall image of the institution and its relevance to contemporary British life. Maintaining these standards was seen as essential to preserving the monarchy's position and authority. Captain Morrison straightened his uniform one final time and assumed his position, ready to play his part in the unfolding ceremony. His years of experience and training had prepared him for this moment, and he approached his duties with the confidence that came from thorough preparation and unwavering dedication to service. The morning was about to test that preparation in ways he could never have anticipated. The black sedan carrying Carole Middleton glided smoothly through the palace gates, its arrival perfectly timed according to the detailed schedule that governed every aspect of the day's proceedings. As the vehicle approached the main entrance, Captain Morrison stepped forward, his movements precise and practiced. The moment that would later send shockwaves through the royal household was about to unfold, though neither he nor Mrs. Middleton had any inkling of the storm that was brewing. Morrison's mind was focused on executing his duties flawlessly, as he had done countless times before. The approaching vehicle contained what he recognized as an important guest, someone deserving of appropriate recognition and respect. His training had ingrained in him the importance of treating all royal family members and their close associates with dignity and proper ceremony. What happened next would be analyzed and discussed in palace corridors for months to come. As Carole Middleton stepped from her vehicle, Elegant in a navy blue ensemble that spoke to her understanding of appropriate royal event attire, Captain Morrison moved into action. In a gesture that seemed natural and appropriate at the moment, he executed a deep, formal bow that demonstrated the highest level of respect typically reserved for senior members of the royal family. The bow was lower and more elaborate than the standard greeting protocol called for when receiving royal family guests who were not themselves titled members. The depth and formality of Morrison's bow caught the attention of several palace staff members who witnessed the exchange. In the complex world of royal protocol, such gestures carried significant meaning, and the level of ceremony displayed toward Mrs. Middleton was immediately recognized as being more elaborate than standard procedure dictated. However, in the bustle of preparing for the main ceremony, the full implications of this breach of protocol were not immediately apparent. Mrs. Middleton received the formal greeting with her characteristic grace and composure, acknowledging Captain Morrison's gesture with a polite nod before proceeding toward the palace entrance. Her years of experience attending royal functions had taught her to navigate such moments with dignity, while never presuming more importance than her position warranted. She understood the delicate balance required in her unique situation as mother to the Princess of Wales, but not herself a titled royal. Inside the palace, preparations for Queen Camilla's arrival were reaching their final stages. Her schedule had been carefully coordinated to ensure that her entrance would command the attention and ceremony befitting her status as queen consort. The protocol officers had reviewed every detail of her reception, from the positioning of guards to the precise timing of her ceremonial welcome. Everything was designed to demonstrate the respect and recognition due to her position. The morning continued with various dignitaries and guests arriving according to the predetermined schedule. Each arrival was managed according to established protocols, with the level of ceremony adjusted to reflect the guest's status and role in the day's proceedings. The precision required to execute such events successfully was enormous, with dozens of staff members coordinating their actions to create the seamless flow that characterized well-run royal functions. Captain Morrison returned to his post after greeting Mrs. Middleton, satisfied that he had performed his duties appropriately and professionally. His years of experience had taught him to treat all guests with respect and dignity, and he felt confident that his actions had reflected well on both himself and the institution he served. The significance of the deeper bow he had given would not become apparent until later events brought it into sharp contrast. Word of Mrs. Middleton's arrival and the warm reception she had received began to circulate among palace staff, as was typical during major events. The informal communication network that existed among employees served to keep everyone informed about the progress of the ceremony and any notable occurrences. At this stage, Morrison's greeting was noted as being particularly gracious, but no one yet recognized the protocol implications that would later cause concern. Queen Camilla's arrival time was approaching, and final preparations were being made to ensure that her reception would be executed with the full ceremony appropriate to her rank. The guards assigned to greet her had been specially briefed on the specific protocols governing interactions with the queen consort, including the precise nature of the formal recognition she was to receive. These protocols had been established to reflect her position within the constitutional hierarchy. The relationship between protocol and precedence in royal circles was complex and nuanced, reflecting centuries of tradition and constitutional development. Every gesture, every level of formality, every detail of ceremony carried meaning that extended far beyond the immediate moment. Understanding and maintaining these distinctions was considered fundamental to preserving the dignity and authority of the royal institution. As Queen Camilla's motorcade approached the palace, security personnel made final sweeps of the arrival area while ceremonial guards took their assigned positions. The coordination required for such arrivals was extensive, involving multiple agencies and departments working in perfect synchronization. The goal was always to provide both security and ceremony, creating an arrival that was both safe and appropriately grand. Captain Morrison had moved to a new position by this time, as his duties required him to be present for Queen Camilla's arrival as well. His role in greeting the queen consort would be even more formal and elaborate than his earlier duties, reflecting her senior position within the royal hierarchy. He reviewed the specific protocols in his mind, ensuring that every detail of his performance would be perfect. The importance of maintaining proper precedence and protocol during royal events extended beyond mere tradition into questions of constitutional significance. The way different members of the royal family and their associates were treated by official representatives reflected the broader principles underlying the British monarchical system. These protocols served to reinforce the established order and hierarchy that gave structure to the institution. Queen Camilla's vehicle approached the main entrance with the precision timing that characterized all royal arrivals. Her appearance at such events was always carefully managed to emphasize her dignity and authority while maintaining the approachable demeanor that had become characteristic of the modern monarchy. The balance between majesty and accessibility was something that required careful choreography and execution. As the Queen Consort's car drew near, Captain Morrison prepared to execute the formal greeting that protocol demanded. This would involve an even deeper bow than the one he had given Mrs. Middleton, along with specific ceremonial gestures that acknowledged Queen Camilla's position as a senior member of the royal family. The contrast between the two greetings would soon become a source of intense discussion and analysis. The moment of Queen Camilla's arrival was captured by both official palace photographers and members of the media who had been permitted to document the ceremony. These images would later be scrutinized for details about protocol, ceremony, and the relationships between different members of the royal circle. Every gesture and interaction would be analyzed for its significance and meaning. Queen Camilla stepped from her vehicle with the confidence and bearing that came from years of experience in royal ceremonies. Her presence commanded immediate attention and respect from all present, and she moved through the formal greetings with the practiced ease of someone completely comfortable in such settings. Her acknowledgement of the ceremonial welcome was gracious and appropriate, befitting her position. Captain Morrison executed his greeting to Queen Camilla with all the formality and ceremony that protocol required. However, several observers who had witnessed his earlier interaction with Mrs. Middleton began to notice something troubling. The bow he gave to the Queen Consort, while certainly formal and respectful, appeared to be less elaborate and deep than the one he had given to Mrs. Middleton just minutes earlier. The implications of this discrepancy were immediately apparent to those familiar with royal protocol. The comparison between the two greetings began to circulate among palace staff with remarkable speed. In an institution where protocol and precedence were fundamental principles, any deviation from established norms was quickly noticed and discussed. The suggestion that a member of the Queen's Guard had shown greater ceremony to a non-royal guest than to the Queen Consort herself was deeply shocking to those who understood the significance of such distinctions. Protocol officers who had witnessed both interactions began to compare notes, trying to understand exactly what had occurred and whether their observations were accurate. The possibility that a breach of protocol of such magnitude had taken place was almost inconceivable, yet the evidence seemed clear to those who had been present for both arrivals. The implications for both Captain Morrison and the palace administration were potentially severe. As the ceremony proceeded, discussions about the greeting protocol continued in hushed conversations among staff members. The incident was already being characterized as an unprecedented breach of royal protocol, one that challenged the very foundations of the hierarchical system that governed interactions within the royal household. The fact that such an error had occurred during a formal ceremony made it even more serious. Queen Camilla proceeded with her ceremonial duties, apparently unaware of the growing controversy surrounding the greetings that had preceded her arrival. Her focus was on fulfilling her role in the day's proceedings with the dignity and grace expected of her position. However, the incident was already taking on a life of its own within the palace hierarchy. The news of the protocol breach began to reach senior palace officials, who immediately recognized the seriousness of the situation. An investigation would need to be conducted to determine exactly what had occurred and why established protocols had apparently been violated. The reputation of the Guard service and the integrity of royal ceremony were both at stake. Captain Morrison completed his duties for Queen Camilla's arrival and returned to his assigned post, still unaware that his actions were being intensively analyzed and discussed throughout the palace. His confidence in having performed his duties correctly was about to be severely tested as the full implications of his morning's work became clear to palace authorities. Within an hour of Queen Camilla's arrival, word of the extraordinary protocol breach had reached the highest levels of palace administration. Sir Edmund Worthington, the deputy master of the household, was among the first senior officials to be briefed on what staff members were already calling the most significant breach of royal protocol in recent memory. His immediate reaction was one of disbelief, followed quickly by concern about the potential ramifications for both the institution and Captain Morrison himself. The palace hierarchy sprang into action with the efficiency that characterized responses to any crisis involving royal protocol. Emergency meetings were convened, witnesses were interviewed, and a detailed timeline of events was constructed to understand exactly what had transpired during the morning's arrivals. The seriousness with which the matter was treated reflected the fundamental importance of protocol in maintaining the dignity and authority of the royal institution. Lady Catherine Pemberton, the chief protocol officer, was summoned immediately to provide her expertise on the matter. With over 20 years of experience managing royal ceremonies and protocol, she understood better than anyone the significance of what had apparently occurred. Her preliminary assessment was grave, confirming that if the reports were accurate, Captain Morrison had indeed violated one of the most basic principles governing interactions between palace staff and members of the royal family. The investigation began with a careful review of witness statements from palace staff who had observed both arrivals. Multiple employees confirmed that Captain Morrison's bow to Carole Middleton had been noticeably deeper and more elaborate than the greeting he had subsequently given to Queen Camilla. The consistency of these reports eliminated any possibility that the incident was simply a matter of misperception or exaggeration. Video footage from palace security cameras was immediately requisitioned to provide definitive evidence of what had transpired. The recordings showed clearly that Morrison's bow to Mrs. Middleton had indeed been deeper and held for a longer duration than his subsequent greeting to the Queen Consort. The visual evidence was unambiguous and deeply troubling to those reviewing it, as it confirmed the worst fears about the nature of the protocol breach. Captain Morrison was called to Sir Edmund's office for what was described as an urgent consultation regarding the morning's events. As he walked through the palace corridors, he remained unaware of the storm that was gathering around his actions. His confidence in having performed his duties correctly was about to be severely challenged, as the full scope of his mistake became clear to palace authorities and, eventually, to himself. The meeting in Sir Edmund's office was conducted with the gravity appropriate to such a serious matter. Morrison was shown the video evidence and asked to explain his actions during the morning's arrivals. As he watched the recordings, the reality of what he had done began to dawn on him with devastating clarity. The comparison between his two greetings was impossible to deny or explain away. Morrison's explanation for his actions revealed the human dimension behind what many were treating as a purely protocol matter. He described feeling particularly honored by Mrs. Middleton's presence at the ceremony, recognizing her unique position as mother to the Princess of Wales and her gracious bearing during previous royal events he had witnessed. His intention had been to show appropriate respect and welcome, not to elevate her above her proper station in the royal hierarchy. The captain's words revealed a fundamental misunderstanding of royal protocol principles that shocked the senior officials present. While his motivations had been entirely honorable and his intentions respectful, he had failed to grasp that protocol requirements existed precisely to prevent such well-intentioned but inappropriate gestures. The hierarchy of respect and ceremony was not based on personal feelings or individual merit, but on constitutional position and royal rank. Sir Edmund explained to Morrison the serious implications of his actions, emphasizing that royal protocol was not merely ceremonial tradition, but served essential constitutional functions. The way members of the royal family were treated by official representatives reflected and reinforced their positions within the broader governmental structure. By showing greater ceremony to Mrs. Middleton and to Queen Camilla, he had inadvertently suggested an incorrect hierarchy that challenged fundamental constitutional principles. The discussion in Sir Edmund's office continued for over an hour as officials attempted to understand not only what had happened, but why established training procedures had failed to prevent such an incident. Morrison's service record was exemplary. His knowledge of general protocol was extensive, and his dedication to duty was unquestioned. Yet somehow, in a moment of what he considered appropriate courtesy, he had committed one of the most serious breaches of royal protocol imaginable. Lady Pemberton joined the meeting to provide additional context about the specific protocols governing interactions with Queen Camilla and other members of the royal family. She emphasized that these procedures had been carefully developed to reflect the constitutional significance of different royal positions, and that adherence to them was essential for maintaining the integrity of the monarchical system. Deviations, however well-intentioned, undermined the very foundations of royal authority. The palace administration faced a difficult decision regarding how to respond to Morrison's breach of protocol. His long service record and obviously honorable intentions argued for leniency, but the seriousness of the violation and its potential implications for royal dignity demanded significant consequences. The balance between justice and institutional protection would require careful consideration and consultation with the highest levels of royal household management. Meanwhile, news of the incident had begun to spread beyond the immediate circle of palace officials who had been directly involved in the investigation. While efforts were made to maintain confidentiality, the nature of palace life meant that such extraordinary events inevitably became topics of widespread discussion among staff members. The incident was already being analyzed and debated throughout the royal household. Queen Camilla herself had been briefed on the protocol breach, though her response was characteristically measured and dignified. Her long experience with royal life had taught her to maintain perspective on such matters, understanding that while protocol was important, human error was inevitable and should be addressed with appropriate gravity but not excessive drama. Her primary concern was ensuring that lessons were learned and procedures improved. The broader implications of the incident extended beyond the immediate personnel matter to questions about training procedures and protocol education throughout the palace staff. If an experienced guard like Captain Morrison could make such a fundamental error, what did that suggest about the effectiveness of current training programs? A comprehensive review of educational procedures was immediately ordered to prevent similar incidents in the future. Legal advisors were consulted to ensure that any disciplinary action taken against Morrison would be appropriate and fair given the circumstances of his error and his previous exemplary service record. The goal was to balance the need for accountability with recognition of his honorable intentions and long-standing dedication to duty. The precedent set by this case would influence how similar matters were handled in the future. The media management implications of the incident were also carefully considered by palace communications staff. While the breach of protocol was serious, the potential for negative publicity was enormous if the matter became public knowledge. Strategies were developed to minimize the risk of media exposure while ensuring that appropriate corrective measures were implemented internally. Captain Morrison's colleagues in the Queen's Guard were deeply shocked by news of his protocol breach, finding it difficult to reconcile with their knowledge of his character and dedication. Many expressed support for him while acknowledging the seriousness of his error. The incident served as a sobering reminder to all guards about the importance of maintaining strict adherence to protocol requirements regardless of personal feelings or circumstances. The investigation expanded to include a review of the specific training Morrison had received regarding interactions with royal family members and their guests. Training records were examined, instructors were interviewed, and curriculum materials were reviewed to identify any gaps or ambiguities that might have contributed to his misunderstanding of proper protocol. The goal was to ensure that such confusion could not occur in the future. Palace historians were consulted to determine whether there were any precedents for similar protocol breaches in royal history. Their research revealed that while various protocol errors had occurred over the centuries, the specific nature of Morrison's mistake was virtually unprecedented in its implications. The historical perspective added weight to the seriousness with which the matter was being treated by palace authorities. The psychological impact on Morrison himself was significant, as he began to fully comprehend the magnitude of his error and its potential consequences for his career and reputation. His 15 years of dedicated service suddenly seemed overshadowed by a single moment of misguided courtesy. The personal cost of his well-intentioned but inappropriate gesture was becoming increasingly apparent. Senior members of the royal household staff met in emergency session to develop a comprehensive response to the incident that would address both the immediate disciplinary issues and the broader systemic questions it raised. The goal was to emerge from the crisis with improved procedures and strengthened protocols that would prevent similar incidents while treating Morrison fairly, given his honorable intentions and exemplary service record. As the investigation continued, and the full scope of the protocol breach became clear, palace officials grappled with the challenge of maintaining institutional integrity while dealing humanely with an employee whose error stemmed from respect rather than disrespect, courtesy rather than insubordination, and dedication rather than indifference to royal dignity and protocol. The news of Captain Morrison's protocol breach had reached the very highest levels of the royal household by the following morning, including a detailed briefing provided to King Charles III himself. The king's response was measured but serious, reflecting his deep understanding of the constitutional significance of royal protocol and the importance of maintaining proper hierarchical recognition within the monarchical system. His immediate directive was for a thorough investigation and appropriate corrective action while ensuring that Morrison was treated with fairness and dignity. Prince William and Princess Catherine were also briefed on the incident, given that it involved Catherine's mother and potentially reflected on their family's relationship with royal protocol. The prince's reaction was one of concern for both Captain Morrison and for his mother-in-law, understanding that neither had intended any disrespect or challenge to royal hierarchy. However, he also recognized the constitutional importance of maintaining proper protocol and the need for appropriate consequences. The palace communications team worked overtime to develop strategies for managing the situation should news of the incident leak to the media. Draft statements were prepared, key messages were developed, and contingency plans were created to address various scenarios that might unfold if the story became public. The potential for negative coverage was enormous, given the public's fascination with royal protocol and the complex relationships within the extended royal family. Captain Morrison spent a sleepless night grappling with the implications of his actions and their potential consequences for his career, his family, and his future. The weight of having committed what officials were describing as an unprecedented breach of royal protocol was crushing, particularly given his genuine respect for the institution and his years of dedicated service. The irony that his mistake had stemmed from an excess of courtesy rather than a lack of respect made the situation even more painful. Lady Pemberton spent the morning reviewing every aspect of current protocol training to identify how such a fundamental misunderstanding could have occurred. Her analysis revealed that while general protocol principles were thoroughly covered in Guard training, specific scenarios involving extended royal family members and their appropriate recognition levels might have been inadequately addressed. This discovery led to immediate plans for enhanced training procedures and clearer guidelines. The Queen's Guard unit to which Morrison belonged was placed under intense scrutiny, as officials attempted to understand whether his error reflected broader problems with protocol understanding among the Guard force. Interviews were conducted with fellow Guards, training records were reviewed in detail, and assessment procedures were examined to ensure that similar misunderstandings were not present throughout the organization. Senior palace officials met with representatives from the Ministry of Defense to discuss the incident and its implications for the broader relationship between military protocol and royal ceremony. The integration of military personnel into royal household functions required careful coordination between different institutional cultures and protocol systems. Morrison's error highlighted potential gaps in this coordination that needed to be addressed. Carole Middleton herself was discreetly informed about the incident and its implications by palace officials, who wanted to ensure she understood that the protocol breach was in no way her responsibility or fault. Her reaction was one of genuine concern for Captain Morrison and distress that her presence at the ceremony had inadvertently contributed to such a serious situation. She immediately offered to provide any assistance that might help resolve the matter appropriately. The investigation expanded to include a comprehensive review of video footage from other recent royal events to determine whether similar protocol inconsistencies had occurred but gone unnoticed. This exhaustive analysis revealed several minor protocol variations, but nothing approaching the magnitude of Morrison's breach. The findings confirmed that his error was indeed exceptional in its scope and significance. Legal experts within the palace administration worked to develop appropriate disciplinary measures that would address the seriousness of the protocol breach, while recognizing Morrison's exemplary service record and honorable intentions. The challenge was to find consequences that would serve as a deterrent to future protocol violations, while avoiding punishment that seemed disproportionate to the captain's mistake and motivations. The psychological evaluation ordered for Captain Morrison revealed the depth of his genuine remorse and his complete understanding of the error he had committed. The assessment confirmed that his actions had stemmed from misguided courtesy rather than any disrespect for royal hierarchy or challenge to constitutional principles. This finding influenced the development of appropriate disciplinary measures and corrective actions. Training specialists were brought in to develop enhanced protocol education programs that would address the specific type of confusion that had led to Morrison's error. The new curriculum would include detailed scenarios involving extended royal family members, clear hierarchical guidelines, and practical exercises designed to reinforce proper protocol recognition in various situations. The goal was to ensure that such fundamental misunderstandings could never occur again. The incident prompted a broader review of how the modern royal family's extended connections and relationships should be reflected in palace protocol. The integration of non-royal family members like the Middletons into royal events created complexities that traditional protocol procedures had not fully anticipated. Updated guidelines were needed to address these contemporary realities while maintaining constitutional principles. Queen Camilla's private response to the incident was characteristically gracious and understanding. Her years of experience with royal protocol had taught her to maintain perspective on such matters, recognizing that while procedures were important, human error was inevitable and should be addressed with appropriate seriousness but not vindictive punishment. Her input influenced the development of fair and proportionate consequences for Morrison. The media monitoring team reported increasing speculation in tabloid circles about unusual activity at the palace, though no specific details about the protocol breach had yet emerged publicly. Preparations were made for various disclosure scenarios, including the possibility that Morrison himself might speak publicly about his situation or that other palace staff might leak information to reporters seeking royal stories. Fellow guards who had served alongside Morrison for years struggled to reconcile the serious protocol breach with their knowledge of his character and dedication. Many submitted written statements testifying to his integrity and commitment to royal service, while also acknowledging the seriousness of his error. These testimonials provided important context for officials developing appropriate disciplinary measures. The historical research conducted by palace archivists revealed interesting precedents from earlier centuries when similar protocol confusion had occasionally occurred, though never in such a constitutionally significant context. These historical examples provided some guidance for developing responses that maintained institutional dignity while treating the offending individual with appropriate consideration for their circumstances and motivations. Captain Morrison's family was discreetly informed about the situation and its potential implications for his career and their future. The stress of the incident affected not only Morrison himself, but also his wife and children, who had taken pride in his royal service and were devastated by the possibility that his career might be irreparably damaged by what they saw as an honest mistake born of respect rather than disrespect. The incident became a case study in palace management courses, illustrating the complex challenges involved in maintaining traditional protocol while adapting to contemporary royal family dynamics. The way the situation was handled would influence protocol procedures and training methods for years to come, making Morrison's error a significant learning opportunity for the entire royal household staff. Diplomatic implications were also considered, as the incident had potential relevance for how foreign dignitaries and their recognition levels should be managed during future royal events. The principles underlying Morrison's error could potentially affect international protocol situations, making it important to establish clear precedents and guidelines that would prevent similar confusion in diplomatic contexts. The comprehensive nature of the investigation and response reflected the palace's understanding that protocol breaches of such magnitude required thorough analysis and systematic corrective action. The goal was not merely to punish Morrison, but to strengthen the entire system of royal protocol and ensure that the constitutional principles underlying monarchical hierarchy were properly understood and maintained by all palace staff. As the investigation neared completion and decisions about appropriate consequences approached, palace officials grappled with the challenge of balancing institutional integrity with human compassion, constitutional principle with personal circumstances, and the need for accountability with recognition of honorable intentions gone awry in a moment of misguided courtesy. The final decision regarding Captain Morrison's fate was reached after 3 days of intensive deliberation among the highest levels of palace management, including consultations with King Charles III, senior household officials, and military representatives. The consensus that emerged reflected a carefully balanced approach that acknowledged both the seriousness of the protocol breach and the exceptional circumstances surrounding Morrison's error. The solution would set important precedents for how similar situations might be handled in the future. Sir Edmund Worthington was tasked with delivering the verdict to Captain Morrison in a private meeting that would determine the course of the remainder of his career and his standing within the royal household. The gravity of the moment was not lost on either man as they met in the same office where the investigation had begun just days earlier. Morrison's 15 years of exemplary service weighed heavily in the balance against the unprecedented nature of his protocol violation. The decision reached by palace authorities was both disciplinary and educational in nature, reflecting their conclusion that Morrison's error had stemmed from inadequate understanding rather than willful disrespect or challenge to royal hierarchy. Captain Morrison would be formally reprimanded for his breach of protocol and required to undergo comprehensive retraining in royal ceremony and hierarchy recognition. However, his dismissal from the Queen's Guard was avoided, acknowledging his honorable intentions and exemplary service record. The reprimand itself was significant, representing only the third formal disciplinary action taken against a member of the Queen's Guard for protocol violations in over 50 years. The rarity of such measures underscored the seriousness with which Morrison's error was viewed, while also highlighting the exceptional nature of his situation. The formal nature of the reprimand would remain part of his permanent service record, serving as a constant reminder of the importance of protocol adherence. Morrison's retraining program was designed specifically to address the type of confusion that had led to his error, with particular emphasis on the constitutional significance of royal hierarchy and the precise levels of ceremony appropriate for different categories of royal family members and their associates. The training would be conducted by Lady Pemberton herself, ensuring that the highest level of protocol expertise was applied to preventing similar incidents in the future. The decision to retain Morrison within the Queen's Guard, albeit with restrictions on his ceremonial duties pending successful completion of his retraining, was influenced significantly by testimonials from colleagues and superiors who attested to his character and dedication. The consensus among those who had worked with him was that his error represented a momentary lapse in understanding, rather than any fundamental flaw in his commitment to royal service or respect for monarchical principles. As part of the comprehensive response to the incident, new protocol training procedures were implemented throughout the royal household staff, with particular attention to situations involving extended royal family members and their appropriate recognition levels. The Morrison incident had revealed gaps in existing training that needed to be addressed to prevent similar confusion among other staff members who might face comparable situations. The media management strategy developed by Palace Communications proved prescient when rumors about unusual activity at the palace began appearing in tabloid publications within a week of the incident. However, the specific details of Morrison's protocol breach remained confidential, allowing palace officials to characterize the situation as routine personnel matters, requiring no public comment. The strategy successfully prevented the incident from becoming a public relations crisis. Captain Morrison's response to his disciplinary sentence was characterized by the same dignity and professionalism that had marked his career prior to the protocol breach. He accepted full responsibility for his error, expressed genuine gratitude for the opportunity to continue his royal service, and committed himself completely to the retraining program designed to prevent similar mistakes. His attitude throughout the process reinforced officials' confidence in their decision to retain him. The broader implications of the Morrison case extended throughout the palace hierarchy, serving as a powerful reminder to all staff members about the fundamental importance of protocol adherence and the constitutional significance of royal ceremony. Training programs across all departments were enhanced to include specific modules addressing the lessons learned from Morrison's error and the principles underlying royal hierarchical recognition. Queen Camilla's gracious response to the entire situation was noted by palace officials and contributed to the positive resolution of the matter. Her understanding of the human dimension behind protocol errors and her focus on learning rather than punishment helped create an atmosphere in which constructive solutions could be developed rather than purely punitive measures. Her approach influenced the overall tone of the palace response. Carole Middleton's discreet handling of her own involvement in the situation was appreciated by palace officials, who recognized that she could have created additional complications through public comment or media engagement. Her decision to maintain complete confidentiality about the incident and her expression of concern for Morrison's well-being demonstrated the diplomatic skills that had served her well in navigating royal circles. The retraining program developed for Morrison became the foundation for enhanced protocol education throughout the royal household, with elements of his curriculum being adapted for use in training programs for new staff members across all departments. The incident thus contributed to improved standards of protocol understanding that would benefit the entire royal institution for years to come. 6 months after the incident, Captain Morrison successfully completed his retraining program and was gradually restored to full ceremonial duties within the Queen's Guard. His performance during the retraining period was exemplary, demonstrating both his commitment to learning from his error and his continued dedication to royal service. The successful completion of his disciplinary program validated the palace's decision to focus on education rather than dismissal. The long-term impact of the Morrison Protocol breach extended far beyond the immediate participants, to influence royal household management practices for years to come. The case became a standard reference point for protocol education, staff training development, and disciplinary procedures. The balanced approach taken by palace officials in addressing the incident established important precedents for handling similar situations with both institutional integrity and human compassion. Morrison's colleagues in the Queen's Guard welcomed his return to full duties, viewing his successful navigation of the disciplinary process as validation of their faith in his character and dedication. The incident had actually strengthened relationships within the Guard unit, as members rallied to support their colleague, while also learning important lessons about the critical importance of maintaining protocol standards regardless of personal feelings or circumstances. The enhanced training procedures developed in response to Morrison's error proved their effectiveness over the following years, as no similar protocol breaches occurred among palace staff. The investment in improved education and clearer guidelines paid dividends in maintaining the high standards of royal ceremony and hierarchy recognition that were essential to the dignity and authority of the monarchical institution. 2 years later, Captain Morrison was promoted to senior guard status, a recognition of his exceptional performance following his protocol breach and successful completion of his retraining program. The promotion demonstrated that his career had not been permanently damaged by his error, and that palace officials valued his continued contributions to royal service. His story became an example of how personal growth and learning could emerge from even serious professional mistakes. The Morrison incident ultimately strengthened rather than weakened royal protocol procedures, leading to improvements in training, clearer guidelines for complex situations, and better understanding throughout the palace hierarchy of the constitutional principles underlying royal ceremony. What began as a serious breach of protocol became a catalyst for positive institutional development and enhanced standards of royal service. Captain Morrison continued his distinguished career with the Queen's Guard for several more years, retiring with full honors and the respect of colleagues who had witnessed his professional recovery from a serious error. His handling of the disciplinary process and his commitment to learning from his mistake earned him a reputation for integrity and resilience that enhanced rather than diminished his standing within the royal household. The legacy of the Morrison Protocol breach extended far beyond the immediate incident to influence how royal institutions balance tradition with human understanding, accountability with compassion, and institutional integrity with recognition of honorable intentions. The case demonstrated that even serious errors in royal protocol could be addressed constructively when approached with wisdom, fairness, and commitment to both learning and institutional improvement.